I grew up in a house where fairness was spoken of but never practiced. My mother always defended my sister, no matter what she did, and I was the one left carrying the blame. It started with missing coins and crumpled bills disappearing from my drawer, the money I had saved through chores, birthdays, and small jobs. I noticed the gaps. I counted twice, and I knew what was happening. But when I brought it up, when I tried to tell the truth, my mother didn't listen. She told me I was imagining things, or worse, she told me I was causing problems. My sister stood behind her with that smirk she never tried to hide, and I learned that in my house, the truth didn't matter. What mattered was who my mother wanted to protect. The story didn't end with stolen money. Over time, it grew into something much bigger, something that marked my entire childhood. My mother wasn't content just to dismiss me. She began to insist I needed discipline, correction, something stronger than what she could give at home. She started talking about sending me to a military school. She called it an opportunity, a chance to grow, to learn respect. But I could hear the real reason in her voice. She wanted me gone. It was easier to remove me than to face my sister's mistakes. At first, the talk of military school felt like an empty threat, something said in anger that would fade. But the more she repeated it, the more serious it became. She spoke about it in front of relatives, in front of neighbors, presenting it as a plan already in motion. To them, it sounded like a mother doing what was best for her son. To me, it sounded like betrayal wrapped in polite words. I wasn't being guided, I was being discarded. The sense of injustice built layer by layer. My sister kept taking, and my mother kept defending. She didn't just refuse to punish her, she punished me instead, as if my anger at being robbed was the real offense. I can still remember the sting of those moments. Walking into my room to find my savings envelope nearly empty, confronting her with the evidence, and being told that I was too dramatic, that money wasn't everything, that family mattered. More. Family, she said, while siding with the one who stole from me. I began hiding my money in places no one would think to look, taped under my desk, wedged into the spines of books, folded deep inside shoes I rarely wore. But no hiding place stayed secret for long. Each time I discovered another loss, the same cycle repeated. I would protest, my sister would smirk, my mother would dismiss, and the weight of being unheard pressed heavier against my chest. It was like screaming into a void that only echoed back blame.
The night it broke open was the night I discovered months of savings gone. I had been working small jobs, walking dogs, mowing lawns, scraping together every bill I could. I wanted to buy something of my own, something that would prove I could build a life outside the favoritism that suffocated me. When I opened the envelope and found nearly nothing, the shock hit me like a blow. My hands shook, my throat tightened. I felt a fury I couldn't contain. I went to my mother, the envelope in hand, demanding she see what I saw. I told her this wasn't a mistake, that my sister had taken it. She looked at me with the same calm, heavy face and told me I was wrong. She said maybe I had spent it and forgotten. Maybe I had misplaced it. She said accusing my sister was cruel, unfair, disrespectful. She said money could be replaced, but family couldn't. I stood there, heart pounding, words choking in my throat, and realized nothing I said would change her mind. My sister didn't even bother pretending. She stayed in the next room, listening, smiling to herself, untouchable. She didn't need to defend herself. My mother did it for her. That was the same night my mother brought up the military school again, but this time it wasn't a vague idea. It was specific, certain. She said I needed structure. She said I was too angry, too wild, too much trouble. She said I needed to learn respect, to be shaped into someone better. But I knew the truth. She didn't want to fix me. She wanted to get rid of me. The thought of leaving settled in my chest like ice. I pictured drills and uniforms, endless orders barked across fields. I imagined being stripped of choice, molded into something hard and unrecognizable, while my sister stayed home, shielded, still the golden one. It wasn't an opportunity. It was exile, dressed up as discipline. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. My sister's laughter drifted through the wall, light and easy, while my mother moved around the kitchen. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The walls didn't protect me anymore. They confined me. Every creak, every sound pressed against me with the reminder that I was not wanted, not believed, not chosen. Days blurred together. The talk of military school didn't fade. It became more frequent, more certain. My mother mentioned it casually, as if the decision had already been made. She told relatives I would benefit from discipline. They nodded, praised her for being strong, for doing what was best. They didn't see the truth, that she was protecting the wrong child, that she was willing to sacrifice me to preserve the illusion of harmony.
My sister fed on it. Her smirk grew sharper, her confidence stronger. She knew she could do anything and still be protected. She began taunting me in small ways, leaving coins in places I would find them, daring me to accuse her. I stopped reacting. I had learned that reacting only made me look guilty, only made my mother's case stronger. I swallowed the anger, the humiliation, the pain, until silence became my shield. But silence doesn't erase resentment. It only buries it deeper. I began to imagine leaving, not to military school, but on my own terms. I thought about walking out and not coming back, about building a life far from the house that never felt like home. But I was young, and leaving wasn't simple. Dependence tied me there. Obligation tied me there. Hope tied me there. The faint, foolish hope that maybe my mother would wake up and see me, that maybe she would understand the weight she had placed on me. One night, unable to hold it in, I left the house after everyone had gone to sleep. The streets were empty, the air sharp with cold, but for the first time in weeks, I felt I could breathe. The city didn't care about me, but its indifference was kinder than the twisted favoritism at home. I sat on a bench and wondered what it would be like to choose exile, rather than wait to be pushed into it. I returned before dawn, the house looming like a verdict. Inside, nothing had changed. My sister slept peacefully. My mother's door was shut. I went back to my room like a prisoner stepping into a cell. As weeks turned into months, the threat of military school grew closer. My mother showed me a brochure one evening, sliding it across the table as if it were a gift. The glossy photos of uniforms and fields looked more like a threat than an opportunity. She talked about pride, leadership, and discipline. None of it touched me. All I heard was her choice, loud and final. She was sending me away. I carried the brochure to my room and sat with it for hours. The images blurred, my chest heavy. I imagined myself there, stripped of freedom, molded into something I didn't want to be. I thought about my sister, free at home, untouched. I thought about my mother, satisfied with her decision, and I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but the realization that I had become invisible in my own family. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the brochure on the desk, the weight of betrayal pressing down. I thought about the coins stolen, the savings vanished, the accusations dismissed. I thought about my mother's calm face, about the way she said it was for my own good, and I knew she would never see the truth. The house that should have been my refuge had turned into a place where survival meant silence, and as much as I wanted to run, I knew I wasn't ready yet. Not ready to leave, not ready to fight, not ready to accept that exile was coming whether I wanted it or not. All I could do was endure. For now.
The brochure stayed on my desk for weeks, its glossy pages staring at me every night when I tried to sleep. I didn't read it again, but I couldn't throw it away. It sat there like a verdict, like proof that my mother's decision had already been made. My sister passed by my room more often during that time, her eyes flicking toward the brochure with a smirk that cut deeper than any insult. She didn't need to say anything. She knew, and I knew, and my mother made sure I understood that no amount of protest would change her mind. Life at home shifted into something colder. Meals were quieter, not because conflict had stopped, but because the silence felt heavier than words. My mother didn't lecture me about the military school anymore. She didn't need to. The possibility hung over me every moment, reminding me I had no power. My sister continued to take what she wanted, sometimes money, sometimes just small things from my desk or drawers. Each theft was another reminder that she was untouchable. I stopped confronting her. I stopped telling my mother. I stopped expecting anyone to defend me. Instead, I built walls inside myself.
I spoke less, avoided eye contact, spent more time outside the house. I took longer routes home from school, walked the streets until my legs ached, sat on empty benches and stared at passing cars. It was easier to face strangers who didn't know me than to walk back into a house where I was invisible. I told myself silence was survival, that if I endured quietly enough, I could outlast it. But endurance has a cost, and mine was the steady erosion of who I thought I was. There were nights when I imagined running away for good. I would picture stuffing my few belongings into a bag and disappearing, finding some place where my presence wasn't a problem. But I was too young, too tied to the little I still had. The thought of leaving entirely terrified me almost as much as staying. So I stayed, caught between a home that wasn't home and a future I didn't want. The day my mother filled out the first application for the academy, I felt something inside me fracture. She sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, writing out my details as if she were ordering a product. I stood in the doorway watching, unable to speak. She didn't look at me. She didn't ask. She just wrote. My sister drifted behind her, glanced at me with that same smirk, and walked away. That image burned into me. My mother choosing, my sister gloating, me silent. I didn't fight it. I didn't rip the papers away or shout. I just went back to my room, shut the door, and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. It was easier to go numb than to let the anger consume me. That was how I survived, by detaching, by letting myself drift above it like smoke, even though inside I was crumbling. The months that followed blurred into a pattern of waiting. Some days I believed I would be sent away any moment. Other days I convinced myself it was just talk, that she wouldn't follow through. But whether or not it happened almost didn't matter anymore. The damage had already been done. My mother had made it clear she was willing to sacrifice me to protect her sister. That truth reshaped everything I believed about family, about love, about safety.
By the time I was old enough to leave on my own, the house no longer felt like a place I belonged. I packed my bags with shaking hands, not because I was afraid to leave, but because part of me still hoped someone would stop me. No one did. My sister barely looked up. My mother told me she hoped the structure I needed would find me out there. She didn't say she would miss me. She didn't ask me to stay. She just let me go. Life outside wasn't easy. I stumbled, made mistakes, struggled to support myself. But every hardship felt different from the ones I had faced at home. Out in the world, the challenges were real, but they weren't twisted by favoritism or betrayal. If I failed, it was mine. If I succeeded, it was mine too. That small freedom kept me moving forward. The scars, though, came with me. I carried the suspicion that people couldn't be trusted, that even those closest to me might turn against me. I kept my savings hidden in strange places, long into adulthood, slipping money into books, taping it under furniture, never quite believing it was safe. I flinched at the sound of laughter behind closed doors, half expecting it to be at my expense. Trust was a muscle I no longer knew how to use. Years later, when I tried to build relationships, those patterns followed me. I found it hard to believe in love, hard to accept kindness without waiting for it to turn. Friends noticed my silence, my tendency to withdraw, my habit of expecting betrayal. Some stayed, some left, but the truth remained. The lessons of my childhood had written themselves deep into me. I saw my mother less and less. Visits were strained, conversations shallow. My sister grew into adulthood too, carrying with her the same entitlement she had always known. She talked about struggles of her own, but they rang hollow to me. She had never been told she was the problem, never been threatened with exile. She had never sat awake at night listening to the house remind her she didn't belong. One visit in particular stays with me. I came back for a holiday, already tense, already counting the hours until I could leave again. My mother hugged my sister tightly, praised her for things I knew weren't true, dismissed my presence with a few casual words. At dinner, the conversation turned to old times, and my sister laughed about the way she used to take from me, like it was a harmless joke. My mother laughed with her. I sat there in silence, my chest burning, realizing that even now, even years later, the truth was still invisible to them.
I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just decided, quietly, that it would be my last holiday in that house. And it was. Distance gave me clarity. I began to understand that what had happened to me wasn't just about stolen money or a threatened school. It was about being erased, about having my pain minimized until I almost believed it wasn't real. But it was real. It shaped me. It followed me into every corner of my life. The hardest part was accepting that my mother never would. She would never admit what she had done. She would never say she was wrong. She would never give me the fairness I craved. And my sister would never apologize. Waiting for those things only kept me trapped. I had to let go, not for them, but for me. Even now, though, the memories return. The sound of coins clinking in a drawer, the smirk on my sister's face, the brochure on the table, my mother's steady hand writing out my name as if I were nothing more than a problem to be solved. Those images sit in me like scars, not bleeding anymore, but never fading. What I learned is simple, though it took years to accept. Some homes are not safe, not because of strangers, but because of the people who live inside them. Some betrayals cut deeper because they come from the ones meant to protect you. And sometimes survival doesn't look like victory. It looks like silence, endurance, and eventually walking away. I don't tell this story to gain sympathy. I tell it because silence kept me prisoner for too long. I tell it because maybe someone else has lived in that same imbalance, has felt invisible in their own family, has carried the weight of being blamed for pain they didn't cause. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. My mother defended my sister even as she stole from me. She threatened to send me away rather than face the truth. And in doing so, she taught me a lesson I never wanted but can't forget. Sometimes the people who should protect you most are the ones you must survive. And surviving, though it feels small, is its own kind of strength.